So this is from, what's the name? Contagion, which is a really good movie. I watched it at the beginning of COVID, and the character here, he's a charlatan, a grifter, a snake oil salesman in the movie Contagion, and he's promoting an alternative cure. So let's watch what he has to say.
Ribavirin has been shown to be effective against this virus. Yet, Homeland Security is telling the CDC not to make any announcements until stockpiles of the drug can be secured.
Well, Dr. Gupta, there continue to be evaluations of several drugs. Ribavirin is among them. But right now, our best defense has been social distancing. No handshaking, staying home when you're sick, washing your hands frequently.
Let me bring in Alan Crumwoody into this debate as well. Alan's a freelance journalist. He was the first to track the Shinko busman video. Alan, today on Twitter, you wrote that the truth about this virus is being kept from the world by the CDC, by the World Health Organization, to allow friends of the current administration to benefit from it, both financially and physically.
There are therapies we know are effective right now, like forsythia, and they don't even appear on the CDC website.
On your blog, you also...
Ivermectin, literally, hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin is forsythia in this movie.
Also wrote that the World Health Organization is somehow in bed with pharmaceutical companies?
Because they are. That's who stands to gain from this. They're working hand in glove.
For the record, if you haven't seen Contagion, you definitely should. Okay? Contagion is straight up like a COVID pre-watch. When I first watched it, though, because I remember watching it like as soon as COVID popped up, while like COVID was popping off, when I first watched it, I thought, no one is as crazy as this character. And I was fucking wrong. I'm here to admit that. Contagion had is it Jude Law? Is that his name? Jude Law's character in Contagion, I thought, was too far-fetched. I was incredibly wrong. I was like, no one is going to fucking shill an alternative cure that like actually has staying power in our mass consciousness. No fucking shot. Anyway.
Authoritarianism and American politics for
the only problem with... I'm not going to give away the end, okay? Just watch the whole thing.
many years, and we thought that made him the perfect person to assess COVID policy in the first days of a new year. Glenn Greenwald joins us.
Yeah, bro, Brazil. A guy in Brazil is the perfect person to talk about COVID policy. Motherfucker, what's happening in Brazil? It's like the only country on this side of the fucking world that is doing just as poorly as we are. Are you kidding me?
Tonight, Glenn, thanks so much for coming on. Do you think these superstitions can continue?
It's really remarkable how so long into the universal availability of COVID vaccines, which we were constantly told we were supposed to celebrate and even venerate, that it was the way out of the pandemic, everybody can get vaccines if they want, there's increasing calls for even greater repression on our lives, greater calls for vesting the state with more and more power. Why would that be? I think fear is an extremely powerful human motivator, and demagogues in government know how to stimulate it for their own power. But I also think that with social media, the more people are constantly feeding on stories about how they should be frightened, the more this fear is intensifying. And I think there's almost like an addiction, Tucker, to being protected by the state, to not having to return to normal life. There's a desire for the pandemic to continue, even though the acute dangers have long since passed as a result of numerous factors, including a less threatening variant and the availability of natural immunity and vaccines. And it's really disturbing to see how the repression is increasing even as the threat decreases.
There is...
Bro, the oppression is increasing. The government is supposed to do government things when the people are unfortunately too stupid to do the fucking smart thing for their own good, okay? That's why we have seatbelt laws. That's why we have laws against drunk driving, okay? I'm sorry, but your fucking idiotic libertarian point of view does not fucking work in this circumstance. It is the exact same energy as claiming that drunk driving laws are actually a form of oppression. Okay, technically, everything that the government does is a little authoritarian. Okay, it's exclusionary for the most part, but they're doing that because there's a utilitarian purpose for it. That's why we have age of consent laws. That's why we punish people for trafficking, child pornography, things like that, for obvious reason. Okay, for good reason. And also for Glenn Greenwald to say that the government has increased the oppression in this circumstance at a time when the CDC very famously said, yeah, fuck it, dude. If you got COVID 5 days later, just walk out, you know, just wear a mask. Be sure to wear a mask. But, you know, you should probably be fine. You don't even need to get fucking tested for it, okay? The idea that the government is increasing oppression at a time when, like, the CDC is straight up saying, take it on the fucking chin. Who cares? We're all going to get fucking Omicron anyway. GG's is additionally idiotic.
I hint every day in the news of the increasing militarization of our response to this COVID pandemic. So you just saw the
people working hardest to make their pandemic permanent are the ones using their platforms to insist that even the most non-burdensome public health measures are an intolerable violation of our precious freedoms. That's a really good fucking take. Holy shit.
The governor of Connecticut call up the National Guard to distribute COVID.
Are grifters still pushing ivermectin, or did time pass like hydroxychloroquine? No, it depends on the fucking seasoning of grift. Some grifters still actually do that. Some grifters are still pushing ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine. Actually, a lot of grifters still push ivermectin. I think the difference is now we have like monoclonal antibodies and like new kinds of drugs are coming out for treatment of COVID, like the Pfizer pill. You know, hopefully the casualties are going to diminish.
Supplies. The mayor of Washington just got full control of the National Guard of Washington. Congressman from Texas was calling for FEMA to get involved in all of this stuff. Should that make us nervous? Is it paranoid to think, wait a second, what the hell's going on? How do you read those developments?
I would really encourage people to go use Google and go back to the debate right after the 9/11 attack when all of these radical proposals were introduced to increase power.
Bro, this is so fucking gross. Comparing the fucking mass hysteria post 9/11 that led to like people getting fucking murdered because they looked Muslim. Because the first victim of a hate crime post 9/11 was actually a sick person by a white supremacist piece of shit. And comparing that fucking psychosis, that mass psychosis, that like idiotic approach, and the government's disgusting fucking actions in the aftermath of that, especially as like, you know, a anti-surveillance state libertarian like Glenn Greenwald, who's done a lot of work in that field, like recognized and good work in that field, taking that and then making that as a comparison to like post-COVID or COVID lockdown measures is so psychotic, dude. This is the greatest example that Glenn Greenwald is a fucking charlatan of the highest magnitude, because he's devaluing all the good fucking work that he did, because there's no fucking shot he believes that like mass surveillance on all Muslims in fucking Dearborn and like the torturing of Muslim Americans in a fucking CIA black site is comparable to in Texas being forced to wear a fucking mask when he walks over from the Applebee's hostess table to the fucking table is even in any way remotely fucking comparable, okay? That is psychotic. It is so disgusting, dude. Are you fucking insane? Shame on you, Glenn Greenwald. That is insanity, dude. That is insanity.
Power in the hands of the government, like the Patriot Act. And the argument at the time was, oh, don't worry, these are temporary measures. They're only going to be in place for as long as is necessary to get this crisis, this emergency, under control. 20 years later, the Patriot Act is very much in place. Every 4 years, it's renewed without any opposition. Its uses and application have wildly expanded beyond its original intention. It's almost never used for terrorism. It's used for a whole variety of other means for the government to spy on its citizenry. When you start building these bureaucratic apparatuses that vest power in the hands of the state to control the lives of citizens in the name of some temporary crisis, it never is temporary. It never goes away. There's never a political motive to dismantle it. It will.
This is a classic fucking annoying Reddit debate lord approach too, because then he has an out. Okay, he ultimately has an out in the way that he described the situation. He can always say, "I wasn't making that exact same comparison," but he's implying it. Okay, he's saying that the surveillance apparatus could be used for any kind of issue. He never fully says it's being used for COVID right now in the exact same capacity, but he's heavily implying it on the Tucker Carlson broadcast. And that plays a role in Tucker Carlson's overarching argument that, like, the government is doing this against white people. They're coming after you. Okay. And the government is certainly doing this against anti-vaxxers and they're coming after you. That's precisely what he's playing the role of here. He's using the entirety of his fucking journalistic integrity, or, you know, now lack thereof, but the journalistic integrity that he once had and his body of work, which was actually fucking good until the past 4 years or 5 or past 2 years even, to justify the psychotic tinfoil nonsensical bullshit that Tucker Carlson spews on a regular basis. So stupid.
Will just continue. And even if there's a cure tomorrow for COVID, they'll just transform it into the Office of Infectious Diseases or the...
Why? This is not true. Any moment where we have seen even a slight fucking change, like when the vaccines first came out, every fucking facet of government was excited to unleash the public, okay? They immediately dropped the restrictions. Why did they do that? Because no one wants to be fucking locked up. The restrictions were immediately fucking taken off when the vaccines first came out, and then they had to be restored. And for people who are saying that's not true, that's not fucking true, you're delusional, look at California, dude. I think you guys forgot. Even in a place like California, which is like very liberal and supposedly has some of the worst fucking restrictions, or some of the most like strict restrictions. California, you can go to a fucking bar or a restaurant in the state of California and sit the fuck down and eat now normally, okay? You absolutely can, and people do all the time. There was a time and place where you couldn't even go into a restaurant, or there was a time and place where you could only eat outdoors. There was a time and place where you could only, if you were eating indoors, you were inside a plexiglass, okay? All of that's gone. The most, rigorous lockdown measure in the state of California is you have to be vaccinated if you go to a bar or a fucking club or a place of business that you frequent, okay? They ask you for your vaccine card, and you have a mask on for 1 second before you sit down at your table, and then you take it off. Is that really the peak of oppression? Like, you sound like a privileged little fucking brat if you consider that to be in any way, shape, or form remotely oppressive. They're soon going to make you have to put a mask over your face after you take a bite while you shoot. No, they're never going to do that. You know why? Because that would be psychotic. That's insane. And that's never going to happen. Okay? That's never going to happen. People just want to minimize the risk as best as they possibly can. And they don't do a good job with it. Because everyone, again, every single human being, unless you're on twitch.tv/HasanAbi and you want to fucking watch me for 8 to 10 hours a day, usually want to be outside, okay? They want to go and socialize with people. Not everyone's fucking agoraphobic. That's the point. That's actually the point I'm trying to make here as well. We've already made these gigantic concessions. We've already made these ginormous concessions and lowered the restrictions.
The administrator of public health, and these powers, once vested, are going to be very difficult to pry out of the hands of government.
Yeah, they call you paranoid, then give you every cause for paranoia. I notice. Greenwald.
Every time Tucker Carlson laughs, a baby dies. I swear to God.